Centuries after the fall of empires, the chains of colonialism still bind us, shaping our world in ways that are often hidden in plain sight. Colonialism wasn't just a historical moment. It was a seismic force that reshaped continents, cultures, and consciousness. A legacy that continues to echo in the economic, cultural, and political systems we navigate today. This video dives deep into these enduring colonial chains, examining how the power dynamics and exploitation of the past have laid the groundwork for present-day disparities and injustices. From global economic imbalances to cultural erasure, the residue of colonial ambition lingers in our society's fabric, impacting millions who struggle against the invisible barriers created long ago. We must confront this legacy head-on, acknowledging the uncomfortable truths it unveils. Understanding the colonial past isn't just about history. It's about taking responsibility, fostering meaningful change, and breaking the chains that still hold us back. Join me as we explore this harsh reality, shedding light on a past that continues to shape our future in profound ways. Only by facing these truths can we begin the work of healing and transformation. Historical context of colonialism. Colonialism was no mere chapter in history. It was an epoch marked by relentless conquest and exploitation. European powers, driven by greed and an insatiable thirst for dominance, embarked on a mission to subjugate vast stretches of the globe. Native lands became battlegrounds, their wealth extracted to feed the imperial appetites of distant empires. The motivations were clear: economic gain, resource extraction, and cultural domination. Colonizers imposed foreign rule, dismantling intricate systems of governance that had flourished for centuries. They planted flags and drew arbitrary borders, often with little regard for the complex tapestry of ethnic, linguistic, and cultural diversity that characterized these lands. Yet the end of colonial rule was not a liberation. It was the beginning of another struggle. As former colonies emerged from the shadows of foreign domination, they faced immense hurdles. Newly drawn boundaries sowed division, while drained resources hindered development. Political systems, imported along with colonial rule, often proved ill-suited to the indigenous context, creating power vacuums that fueled conflict and instability. These historical injustices are not distant memories. They bleed into the present, leaving scars that affect the socioeconomic and political landscapes worldwide today. Understanding this context forces us to confront the uncomfortable legacy that continues to perpetuate inequality and shape our global society. Economic impacts. Colonialism wasn't just about conquest, it was an economic plunder. Colonial powers ruthlessly extracted resources, minerals, spices, farmland, leaving devastated economies in their wake. Wealth flowed outward to sustain imperial centers, while colonized nations were drained, impoverished, and left vulnerable. The legacy of this extraction is glaring today. Many former colonies remain caught in a cycle of economic dependence, their raw materials exploited by international corporations that still control vast wealth. Decades of resource extraction without fair compensation created persistent inequality, where a tiny elite benefits while the majority remain impoverished. Furthermore, colonial economic systems imposed arbitrary borders that ignored local industries, social structures, and resource distribution. After independence, these nations often struggled to develop sustainable economies, weighed down by debt, corruption, and distorted industries rooted in colonial extraction. This legacy fuels global disparities. Rich nations and corporations control wealth and resources, often at the expense of the developing world. It's no coincidence that poverty, unemployment, and economic instability persist in post-colonial societies. This isn't just history, it's a present-day injustice. The scars of colonial economic exploitation continue to dictate global inequality, shaping our world in ways that demand acknowledgement and action. We must recognize that the roots of many economic struggles trace directly back to the colonial chains we still carry. Cultural erosion and resilience. Colonialism didn't just conquer lands, it systematically eroded identities. Indigenous languages, traditions, and spiritual practices were suppressed, replaced by foreign systems that declared their culture superior. Entire worlds of knowledge and artistry were erased in the name of progress, leaving pockets of resistance struggling to survive beneath the weight of colonial dominance. But history shows one thing: resilience. Despite relentless efforts to wipe out their cultures, indigenous communities have fought fiercely to revive their languages, stories, and traditions. From the revival of native languages in Hawaii to the resurgence of African art and spirituality, these acts of resistance showcase an unbreakable spirit, proof that culture is not easily destroyed. However, the scars run deep. Much of the cultural landscape remains fragmented, and centuries of suppression have left communities fighting to reclaim their identity. The ongoing struggle isn't just about tradition. It's a fight for dignity, history, and sovereignty. Today, understanding this legacy is vital. Colonialism attempted to erase entire civilizations, but the resilient spirit of indigenous peoples continues to resist and rebuild. Recognizing these acts of perseverance is not just acknowledgement. It's a call to support the vital work of cultural restoration and justice, political structures, and social inequities. Colonialism didn't just steal resources or suppress cultures. It planted seeds of political chaos and inequality that still haunt us today. Colonial powers imposed foreign governance systems, often rewriting borders arbitrarily, ignoring ethnic, cultural, and social realities. Entire regions were stitched together by colonial rulers, creating divided societies rife with tension and conflict. This imposed rule favored a small elite, those aligned with colonial powers, while the majority remained marginalized, exploited, and silenced. Dictatorships, puppet governments, and systemic corruption became tools to maintain control, denying people genuine self-governance or sovereignty. Post-independence, these artificial borders and political hierarchies fueled unrest, ethnic conflict, and power struggles that persist today. Societies continue to grapple with inequality, fueled by centuries of marginalization and systemic injustice. Colonial legacies of political suppression aren't just relics of the past. They shape the inequalities and conflicts we see today. Exploited communities often lack access to justice, fair governance, or basic rights, while the same structures favor colonial-era elites and foreign corporations. Understanding this history calls us to recognize the lasting impact of colonial politics. We must challenge these legacies, demanding fairer, inclusive governance and equal rights, because true sovereignty begins with acknowledging and rectifying injustices rooted in the colonial chains. Environmental consequences. Colonialism was driven by greed, and the environment paid the price. Colonial powers exploited natural resources, logging, mining, and agriculture, to fuel their economies, often with ruthless disregard for the land's health. Forests were clear-cut, rivers dammed, and ecosystems decimated, all in the name of profit. This exploitation left a legacy of environmental degradation that persists today. Many former colonies still battle deforestation, soil erosion, and loss of biodiversity, direct results of centuries of resource extraction. The environmental policies imposed during colonial rule prioritized short-term gains for imperial powers, ignoring the long-term health of ecosystems or local communities dependent on them. Moreover, colonial industries contributed to pollution and climate change, effects that ripple globally. The destruction was not just ecological, it was a fundamental attack on the means of life for countless generations. Today, we see the consequences in rising sea levels, desertification, and species extinction, all linked to those colonial practices. Understanding this history reveals an urgent need for sustainable practices and environmental justice. To heal these wounds, we must recognize our shared responsibility to protect the earth, acknowledging how colonial greed laid the foundation for many of today's ecological crises. Only through collective action can we begin to break these chains and restore balance to our planet. The scars of colonialism run deep, shaping wealth disparities, cultural loss, environmental destruction, and fractured nations. Recognizing this legacy is no longer just an act of history. It's a moral imperative. We are living on the remnants of systems built on exploitation, division, and greed, and it's our responsibility to confront these realities head-on. Reflection is painful but necessary. We must ask ourselves, How do these colonial chains continue to influence our lives today? Are we supporting systems rooted in inequality? How can we, as individuals and communities, break these cycles of injustice? Change begins when we acknowledge the truth. Only through honest reflection and collective effort can we dismantle these lasting legacies and build a future rooted in justice, equality, and sustainability. The time to act is now. Educate yourself, challenge injustice, and work tirelessly to heal our fractured world, because the future depends on the steps we take today. If you found this to be of interest, consider leaving your like, sharing this video, and subscribing to the channel. And remember to check the links in the description for resources and tools to help you on your path. Until next time.